and I would like to welcome you to our nationwide teleconference, joining students from over 100 campuses across the nation. While satellite technology is common to the 1988 campaign, this particular telecast is unique in that it has been organized and funded exclusively by students. This process was facilitated through our Students for Gore organizations on over 300 campuses and in all 50 states. The reason for this widespread outburst of student activity is simple. It's the man sitting next to me, Senator Al Gore. Over the last 12 years in the House and Senate, Al Gore has been a leader on such crucial issues as arms control, the environment, and the homeless. He's the only candidate in either party who has put forth a plan to prepare America for the future. And on issues such as trade, education, national defense, and the budget deficit, Gore has distinguished himself by focusing on the nation's long-term agenda. As Senator Gore has noted, in 1960, the American people replaced the oldest president ever to serve at that time with the youngest president ever elected. By sheer coincidence, we have the opportunity to do so again in 1988. As the critical Super Tuesday primaries approach, here to answer your questions in the next 60 minutes, the next President of the United States, Al Gore.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and let me say a word of welcome to all of you who are listening from over 100 campuses, and I'd also like to say a word of congratulations to the students who have organized and funded and put this whole project together. It does enable us to have an interesting conversation for the next hour, and I'm looking forward to your questions and comments and an opportunity to respond to them. This campaign is a fight for the future of the Democratic Party and a fight for the future of this country. The choice has never been clearer. We can continue with the Reagan-Bush blueprint, or we can seek out new leadership and a new blueprint for America's future. I'm offering a message in this campaign that is different from all of the other Democratic candidates in that I'm focusing on the national interest and talking about economic growth, social justice, and a strong and intelligent role for America in the world. I believe very strongly that education is the key to our future. We must make an all-out commitment to building the best education system in the entire world here in the United States. I believe also that the outcome of this election may very well be determined by the enthusiasm and commitment of young people throughout this country. I'm proud that I'm the youngest candidate in this race. I'm also proud that with 12 years experience in the House and Senate, I've compiled a record that I think matches that of anyone in the race on either side, and I believe that the proposals I've been advancing are well matched to the future of this country. So I'm asking for your enthusiastic help, your support, your commitment, and I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have now. So Jonathan, thank you very much, and I'm ready to talk with whoever wants to ask the first question.
Terrific. We'll now begin our question and answer period with our first questioner calling from Floyd College in Lindale, Georgia. Go ahead.
My name is Gail Jacobs, Senator Gore. Labor is one of our nation's greatest resources. Our society is technologically advanced, which requires the need for a vast number of skills developed through education. What do you propose in respect to our nation's greatest resource if you are elected president?
Well, we're entering a time when people are going to have to look forward to the possibility of changing jobs and changing careers several times during their lifetime. We have seen the introduction of advanced technology throughout our economy with robots and computers and automation and the new wave which is called automated factories. And as America's manufacturing sector has actually expanded in the last several years, and as our manufacturing exports have expanded, the number of jobs available in the manufacturing sector has gone down because we're replacing people with the technology. Simultaneously, however, a lot of new jobs are opening up in areas that a few decades ago nobody even knew existed, like computer programming and fiber optics and other new occupations that demand new skills. I've had hearings in the past on something called job forecasting, and I've done a lot of work on job training and job retraining. I believe that the key to making our workforce more productive in the future is investing in the human resources, the education, the knowledge, the skills that will determine whether or not we are able to compete in the future. Now, government should be working with business and labor to put together an innovative nationwide program to have the best job training and retraining in the entire world. I really think that is the key to the future, but more is involved too, because training in and of itself is not much good unless there are jobs waiting for those who get the training and get the skills. In order to make sure that our economy grows, we have to make a number of changes. I'm not going to veer into another subject here, but let me just say briefly that we have to have a change in our fiscal policy to make it possible for us to compete more effectively, and we have to be willing to target areas of opportunity in the world marketplace so that we can bring together the elements business, labor, universities, government, and cooperate more effectively as we compete with our counterparts overseas. But where the workforce itself is concerned, we do have to concentrate much more effectively on the human resources that are so essential for the future.
Our second phone call comes from Rockland Community College, located in Pomona, New York. Go ahead.
Hi, Senator. This is Gary Gripple from Rockland Community College.
Hi.
There's an article in today's New York Times on the failure of all U.S. efforts to stop international drug trafficking. And in fact, the supply of drugs in the United States today has never been larger. To date, the Reagan administration has really made stopping drug trafficking a secondary objective. When you're elected president, what will your strategy be to control this crucial problem?
I saw a statistic the other day that really brought the problem out in sharp relief. We have 6% of the world's population, and yet, according to some studies, we are now consuming 60% of the drugs being consumed in the world. Clearly, we have got to have a massive, all-out effort to deal with this problem. I think our approach has to be an integrated approach, combining new policies in several areas. First of all, foreign policy should play a more prominent role. It's outrageous that the Reagan administration has apparently had secret arrangements with this leader of Panama, Noriega, who evidently has been involved in drug smuggling for a number of years with the knowledge of our intelligence community, even as we relied upon him to help with this outrageous Contra policy in Nicaragua. Now that's an example of where we have failed to put drug enforcement and an anti-drug policy at the top of our agenda when we deal with foreign countries. Now we have problems with Panama, Colombia, evidently Honduras, Mexico. We have got to have a foreign policy that recognizes the seriousness of this problem. Secondly, we have to do a better job of interdiction with the Coast Guard and Border Patrol. Third, we have to do a better job of law enforcement. The interface between the Drug Enforcement Agency and the police departments around the country and the court system is not that good today. I've talked with a number of experts in this field, and they single out that area as one which particularly needs attention. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, we need to do a much better job with prevention and education. Our efforts should start in the earliest elementary school grades. We have got to get the word out more persuasively and more pervasively that taking drugs is a very serious mistake. The country has a problem that it is not facing up to and not dealing with adequately. As president, I will put in place a war against drugs that is not defunded the day after it's declared. That's what happened during the Reagan administration. We'll have an effective and comprehensive approach in a Gore administration.
Okay, our third phone call will come from Harvard University, located in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Hello, Senator Gore. My name is Peter Paris. According to your position papers concerning the economy, you specifically commit to mollifying the deficit by decreasing federal spending, strengthening tax collecting, reducing loopholes for the wealthy, and negotiating trade laws with foreign countries. Such plans seem to be designed to directly benefit middle-class America. However, I'm wondering what economic reforms you suggest, not only for the long-term protection of, but more specifically for the immediate aid and rehabilitation of lower economic classes who have been affected by welfare cuts and other federal inflictions.
Well, I think in some areas the budget has been cut too deeply. In areas that affect the homeless, for example. AIDS research has not received the attention it deserves. Health care, in the budget that was just released, the Reagan administration has proposed cutting health care for the homeless by 68%. Education is another area that I've singled out as needing additional funding and additional attention. We've got to outthink that problem, not just to outspend it. But indeed, there are areas, particularly those programs that are designed to help the needy, that have been cut too deeply. But it is quite possible to give the extra attention needed in those areas while at the same time steadily reducing the budget deficit. Most of the programs in these areas that we're talking about fall in an area of discretionary spending that makes up about 5% of the total amount of spending. While at the same time, in some larger areas of the budget, we've had some very wasteful spending that has been overlooked by this administration. In the Pentagon, certainly, programs like the Bradley Fighting Vehicle ought to be eliminated right away. We need procurement reform. And on the domestic side, we're spending $40 billion a year on unnecessary, routine medical diagnostics that the medical professions say are just totally unneeded. Now, in addition to those savings, I think there are opportunities for breakthroughs in areas like international commodity agreements, where we could have a mutual reduction of farm surpluses around the world, particularly here and in the common market. And I also think, as I say in every speech I make, one of the keys to the future is changing our relationship to the Soviet Union and pursuing not only nuclear arms control, but conventional arms control, which could free up an enormous amount of money for use in other areas of the budget. Now, if none of these measures suffice, then new tax revenue will have to be a part of the solution. I'm not proposing that as a first option, but I've said that anybody who's serious about it understands that it can't be ruled out and may eventually have to be a part of the solution.
Call number 4 comes from the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. Go ahead.
Hello, Senator Gore. My name is Jim Howard. You say you want to continue negotiations with the Soviet Union from a position of strength. I want to know what you mean by this statement and if America's military future would include the continuation of the Star Wars program under your leadership.
Well, first of all, Jim, let me say that I really enjoyed working out with the Wildcats not long ago when I went and had a brief scrimmage with them at your school. I had a great time there. And just yesterday, incidentally, I had a scrimmage with the UCLA Bruins in Los Angeles. And I got a couple of ringers on my team, though, with Tom McMillan, who's a 6'11" congressman here, and Mitch Kupchak. But we had a great time. Now let me respond to your question. First of all, on Star Wars, I think it's a mistake as the Reagan administration has conceived it and as they're pursuing it. I think that some limited research within the constraints of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty is advisable, but the kind of program they've put in place is a serious mistake, and I've been opposed to it from the very beginning. Now, what do I mean by negotiating from a position of strength? Let me give you an example. We have just concluded the so-called INF Treaty, which will remove medium-range missiles in Europe, both those held by the United States and those of the Soviet Union. This treaty was the culmination of a so-called two-track strategy that began during the Carter administration. He and our NATO allies conceived of a plan to negotiate from a position of strength, to use that phrase, and now let me illustrate it. They decided to deploy the Pershing II missile and the ground-launched cruise missile in Europe as a counter to the Russian fleet of SS-20 missiles. Well, the Soviets were very upset about that because the Pershing IIs could hit Moscow from their bases in Germany. But the second track we pursued was to offer them a way to not face that threat and to remove our missiles if they would remove theirs at the same time. Well, that was negotiating from a position of strength. The current administration continued that basic blueprint, and now we have a treaty which I think makes very good sense for the nation. Let me point out that in a debate in South Dakota recently, every single one of my opponents for the Democratic nomination expressed an unwillingness to admit that the Carter decision to deploy those missiles had anything at all to do with the success in negotiating the subsequent treaty. I think that's naive, and I think that negotiating from a position of strength is not just a cliche or a bit of political rhetoric. It really is the best and most effective way to pursue arms control. I'm totally committed to arms control. I've worked harder on that issue than on any other. In fact, it's one of the principal motivations for my getting into this campaign to start with. But I've learned during about 8 years of intensive involvement in the subject that in the Soviet Union, they have a range of opinions and perspectives just as we do. And when the hardliners over there argue against negotiating with us, it is quite productive for them to understand that we mean what we say, and that if a treaty is not possible, we're going to take unilateral steps to make certain that our national security is protected. Now, having said that, let me conclude this response by saying that I firmly believe that Gorbachev and his associates may well be offering something really new, and the next president may have an historic opportunity for a really good breakthrough on arms control to change that U.S.-Russian relationship. I've had the experience in that area. I think I know how to go about it, and I'm most anxious to see that breakthrough take place.